right. Should I wait? Okay. Alright, hi, I'm Moratz, and I have just officially completed my 7-month gap year program with Can You Beyond Borders?
Yeah.
I remember distinctly sitting out on my porch on one of the last days at home before the trip. I was gazing up at the stars and listening to the leaves rustle in the breeze. It seemed so familiar to me at the time, but an image I would often think about when I was halfway across the world. These stars would be the exact same stars I would see when I looked up at the sky in South Africa. I wondered what my circumstances would be so far away from home. Would I be happy? Would I have friends? What would be the hardest part of the trip for me? What I truly wanted was a change, something to rock my world. It didn't feel real leaving my comfortable life in Kansas City in exchange for an adventurous year of travel, but I hoped it would bring about the growth that I was looking for in myself. Fast forward 6.5 months later. I'm sent into the wilderness of a Virginia state park to reflect on my trip. The program leaders instruct us to not come back to the cabin for the next 6 hours so that we could spend some time reflecting on our trip. I settle for a serene spot next to a nice creek and tear open the sealed envelope containing a letter I had written to myself on the first day of my trip. My laugh echoes throughout the silent forest as I read a sentence that now sounds so ridiculous to me. I think the easiest part of the trip will be maintaining a smooth group dynamic. Poor Sarah never knew what she had coming her way. I shouldn't have been surprised with the strong personalities amongst the 16 other students on the trip. I feel it takes a certain kind of person to make the decision to do a gap year program. These people are brave and not afraid to take a path less chosen. They make decisions regardless of what society may think. At school, our counselors pushed us day in and day out to check out this college or apply to this school. But we had the guts to say, no, I'm going to make the decisions that is best for me. In the first week of South Africa, our first country, the strong will of the group became quite apparent. In seminars, people openly stated their opinions on controversial topics. I found myself really intimidated. Some supported their statements with random stats that I thought only Wikipedia knew. These 70 people were intelligent, strong individuals, and that was clear. We all handled the unknown and uncomfortable very differently. Here we were, 17 kids who knew absolutely nothing about each other in a faraway land. One of the reasons I was so over-schooled back home was because I had a set reputation. I'd grown up with the same people from elementary school all the way up to graduation, and they knew absolutely everything about me. I was a 4.0 student who was disappointed if she got a B on a test. Missing a homework assignment was not acceptable, and I'd stay after school to suck up to my teachers in the classes I had below an A in. I needed them on my good side if I was going to graduate with a 4.0. Dressing to impress was my motto. I wore sweats to school once and thought it was the worst decision of my life, and never did it again. I had my set group of friends and was fairly close-minded to making any more. And that was how people saw me. I saw this gap year as an opportunity to recreate myself. I didn't want to be that high-maintenance girl anymore. I made the conscious decision to be open and accepting to everyone on the trip. When my mind wanted to make judgments on someone, I pushed it out of my head immediately. These other students were all I had, and deciding to put negative energy towards disliking any of them so early on seemed counterproductive to me. No one wants to be an outsider. It's human nature to want to be liked and wanted. We tend to bond with other people that we have things in common with. Genuine friendships develop over time and grow stronger with experiences and honesty. The thing is, though, we were stuck with the other 16 people in our group whether we liked it or not, and for 7 months. I think this really hit some people hard. It made them scramble to latch on to who they could potentially see themselves hanging out with. Before I could even blink, I could feel the pressure to find where I belonged. I became panicky and found that I didn't really have a place. I was very confused when some people refused to talk to me, so people would turn around and completely walk away from me mid-sentence. Here I was, this 19-year-old girl who had never dealt with the pressure to make friends and fit in, suddenly surrounded by some people who it seemed had already made their mind up about me. It felt like it was straight from a movie, and I thought maybe I was being too sensitive or overdramatic. With time, though, a group had formed, and I desperately wanted to feel included. They continued to pretend I didn't exist, and I continued to try to be their friends. Turns out this group wasn't taking applications, though, and my efforts to be liked and wanted with and acknowledged. Many others in the group also felt excluded from this. Maybe something could have been done if we could have come together and stuck up for each other. The thing is, it's much easier said than done. It's scary to stick up for yourself or others when you stand at risk of being ridiculed. So when I would witness something said to others that was potentially hurtful, instead of calling it out, I chose to leave the comment unacknowledged. The problem is, everyone who felt excluded from the group did this, which left us all in the dust. An issue that could have been overcome by the support from peers didn't seem like an option anymore. Me, a once vocal girl, now taped her mouth shut to avoid further judgments from others. I took the group's words and actions to heart. What they said and did washed over me and changed the way I viewed myself. I didn't feel like I had provoked these people in order to deserve the treatment they were giving me. So why was this happening? I felt small and worthless. I started to believe that I wasn't good enough, and that there must be something wrong with me to be disliked by others. Within the first few weeks of the trip, I sunk further and further into my feelings of sadness and loneliness, and I wanted to go home. Before this trip, I was confident. Nothing had really rattled my confidence throughout my life, and I got along with everyone in school perfectly fine. Yeah, there were the popular girls, and they thought they were as cool as the other side of the pillow, but they didn't give me problems. I'd grown up with most of them, and considered some of them my friends even. Sometimes they were mean to other people, and it was uncomfortable to watch, but it didn't directly affect me. I would risk myself being bullied if I interfered, and at the time, it didn't seem worth it. I had never felt truly bullied by anyone before this trip, so when it started to happen to me, I didn't know how to react. I felt like the stand-up to bullies videos I watched in health class freshman year encouraged me to call them out. But my heart said something different. I had told myself to not make judgments and to avoid fighting fire with fire at all costs at the beginning of the trip. Also, it turned out that standing up for myself might have been harder than I once thought. I continued to feel the need to suck up to them and continue to be ignored. My self-confidence fell to an all-time low. I dread every social gathering, avoiding all conflict possible with the clique. So much was happening around me in South Africa, and all I could ever think about was trying to convince the cool kids to like me. An internal battle boiled inside of me and didn't settle until way later on the trip. I allowed myself to feel bad, and I believe that might have been where I went wrong. Several people in South Africa helped me begin my journey of growth to realize how to value myself and to not take what other people think to heart. Myself and 3 other girls from TVB were moved into our first homestays in the city of Plettenberg Bay, South Africa. Our host mom's name was Lois, and her frizzy red hair bounced as she greeted us with a hug. Her 18-year-old son, Dylan, stood behind and shook our hands. We met the youngest son, Etienne, at dinner that night. They seemed like a warm bunch of people, and that was all I could ask for. After a packed day full of stress and feeling suffocated by the group, I was always ready to come home to my own space. We'd all sit around and eat dinner together, and after that, Dylan and Etienne made the habit to stay and play cards with us. It became a nightly routine, and these boys started to grow on me. Etienne was a little nuisance child. He made faces at us and hated when I touched him or got too close to him. One time I tried to hug him, and he pulled a steak knife from the kitchen drawer and threatened to stab me with it if I came any closer. He's a great kid. Dylan was an athlete who spent a lot of his free time running and surfing. He was humble and kind, and definitely took on the father role in the family. One day he asked if I wanted to come surfing with him. I knew a distraction was needed, so I agreed, even though I knew it would make myself look like an idiot. That afternoon, we took the board out. I squeezed into one of his little wetsuits, he was smaller than me, and filled my way out to sea, Dylan in tow. He'd yell, "Catch this one," and my heart would start pounding as I thought, no, that wave's way too big, it's going to swallow me. But I ended up catching it and somehow fumbled my way up to standing on the board. I'd do a victory dance on the beach, and Dylan would clap and scream for me. Little did I know at the time, Dylan had guided me onto every wave and had me convinced I was doing it all by myself. Later, I confided in him and told him how lonely and disliked I felt. And he reassured me that there was nothing wrong with me, and that I shouldn't let what other people think create who I am. It was a break from the group, and it felt incredibly good to be with someone who made me feel wanted, a friend. So when I wasn't with the group, I spent my free time surfing or listening to music. I was lonely most of the time, but the hope still burned inside of me that maybe there was a chance the group would change their mind about me. One night, everyone headed over to a house down the road, where 2 of the TVB boys were staying. I walked with the people I lived with, but didn't know very well yet. When we got there, we all went to our respective groups, and I found myself just standing there next to circles, desperately trying to look natural. When they let me in on their conversation, after feeling totally ignored, I decided to leave. I was shutting the door When I was shutting the door, I heard a little, "Hey, Sarah, wait! Maggie!" Right there. The curly-haired blonde girl that was living with me in my homestay jogged over and slipped on her shoes. I hadn't gotten to know her yet, but all I know was that she wore knee-high compression socks on the plane from New York to South Africa, and that she enjoyed singing Hannah Montana songs way too much. She sighed and said she couldn't stand another second in there, and I smiled knowing that someone else felt the same way as I did. We hooked arms, and that's where our friendship began. She was there for me when I was the saddest and hugged me when I needed to cry. She wrote me notes and stuck them in my bag, and she would wake me up early and force me to meditate to relieve some of my stress. She's pretty much my mom away from home. The difference between Maggie and I was the way we looked at how we were being treated. She looked at it and said, "These people are mean, but they don't define me." And she told me I will only be happy again if I can, 1, stop trying so hard to be their friend and let the process happen naturally. 2, believe in myself and be myself. And 3, hold the people you love close. I literally wrote these things in my notebook and read them to myself every morning until I started to believe them. Maggie and Dylan both played a huge role in helping me get through my hard time in South Africa and helped me begin my change into a more positive, strong woman. Once we transitioned into our second country, India, the bullying directed towards me started to subside. I wasn't a target to them anymore but I also was no closer to being friends with the group. I found myself still trying to fit in and be recognized by a certain group of people, even after what I had been through with them. There was a small shift in the group dynamic towards the end of India, and awareness by the group of how they had been acting. Change doesn't happen overnight, though. Change takes time, and I was done waiting for change to happen. The only person who I could control was myself, and I decided I was going to do just that. I remember looking back at the times when I was the saddest in South Africa and questioning why it was so hard for me to change my way of looking at the situation. And instead of blaming myself and thinking there was a problem wrong with me, why didn't I just say it's their problem they don't like me? It seems so easy in theory, but I knew it would have been extremely hard to carry out. All those negative feelings I had were like a blindfold, and all I could focus on was my own issues. Once I was able to rip them off my eyes, I could see that there were many beautiful things going on around me. I was in India, for heaven's sake. The world around me became more visible and vibrant, and it was stunning. Friendships I had overlooked in South Africa developed as I became more confident in myself. People who were genuine, interesting, and compassionate. These blossoming friendships started to outweigh my desire to be with the group, and soon I became happy with where I was and became stronger than ever before. Here I stand, 7 months later. At times, I wanted to buy the first plane ticket home to Kansas City, but I'm so much stronger now, pushing through what I have. I'm able to accept that sometimes people aren't going to like you, and that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. I got the rare and raw opportunity to get to see a more vulnerable side of me I didn't even know existed. Not only that, but I got to know myself better. I hope that in the future, I'll be able to have the courage to stand up for others that need support when bullied. What does the future hold for me? I'm going to Boulder, Colorado for college in the fall. The odds that I'll feel left out or picked on again in my life are likely, but because of my experience on 2EB, I'm sure I'll be able to stand up for myself when it happens. I found a new sense of pride in who I am, and someone's opinion on me isn't enough to shake me anymore. Brene Brown, author of The Gifts of Imperfection, writes, "Because true belonging only happens when we present our authentic, imperfect selves to the world. Our sense of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance." Looking forward to this day, 7 months ago, while I was sitting on my porch that hot summer night, all I wanted was a big change to happen on my gap year. And that's exactly what I got.
You said that like this sort of opening process into yourself, you came to like things about yourself that you hadn't thought of before.
I have a really odd sense of humor, if you know me.
Yeah.
No, it's awesome.
Thanks, Sean. And sometimes it can come off as like weird and quirky, I guess. And some people think it's really odd and strange. And I guess I kind of pushed that to the side when I was struggling like with my own problems. And I kind of embraced it more after I like kind of had my revelation.
Was that how the pink stuff happened? Is that part
Pink
of
stuff?
the
Are you talking about
like chubby bunny thing? Is that
that's a part of my words with you guys, yeah.